episode, we are going to be dealing with parallel and distributed databases. So basically, when we talk about parallel and distributed bases, at the end of this video, you are supposed to be able to understand the term of parallel and distributed database. You are supposed to understand the significance of parallel and distributed databases. So, first of all, what is a parallel and what is a distributed database? Now, basically, a parallel database can be seen as that database system that seeks to improve performance. So, and it seeks to improve performance by using the implementation of various operations. So, and those operations are are carried out parallel. So, what that means is that it involves the process by which you carry out your operations on your computer. You carry out the operations on your database with parallel methods. So these parallel methods, there are different techniques involved in this parallel. But what this means is that when you think about parallel, it means that you have multiple. It simply means you have multiple processes being taken place at the same time. So an example of this, example of a type of parallel procedure, not parallel database now, but this is just the process of carrying out computer operations in parallel. So one of these examples is, let's say, when you're trying to send files through AirDrop on your Mac, if you have Mac. So basically, you make use of this parallel um, system because you can send multiple files and they will be going. So, but when you make use of probably, let's say, your Bluetooth, when you're sending through Bluetooth, then you notice that that's a series. Most of the time when we talk about computer networks, they often send files in series except broadband. So broadband can send files in, let's say, parallel. Can send files, but when you are sharing files using Wi-Fi, using hotspots, they always go in series. So what that means, when you take about series, that they go, one has to go for before the other goes, and before the next goes. But when we talk about the internet widely, when you're downloading stuff, you can download, let's say, you can download 3 books at once, depends on your browser. So that's the distinction between parallel and distributed systems. So basically, anytime you hear the word parallel means you can do different things, you can multitask. So whenever you can do different things at the same time, it's called a parallel system. And basically, a parallel database, it is based on this architecture, this parallel system. So that means you can load data, you can build indexes, you can evaluate queries, you can create tables and all the rest. You can do all sorts of processes on your database at the same time, multitasking. So, but on the other hand, let's talk about a distributed database. It is basically a system that in which the data is stored physically across different sites. So, and each site is typically managed by database management system and is capable of running independently of other sites. So, in this case, um, unlike a parallel system, your distributed database system, you have your your database, you have your data physically stored on different sites. So while one can be stored in, for example, when we talk about all these blue chip companies, so at times you could store some of their data in a particular location and then store in another location. So those are interconnected. But most of the time, this in this distributed, there's always a central server. You get it. So that's different. In parallel, you have just one location, and then you are just using that for everything at the same time. Whereas in distributed, it is kind of non-synchronized like that. So at one location can be in operation at the same at the particular time, while another would be in operation at another time. So you get it. So they are distributed. So now the characteristics of this architecture for the parallel database system, the machines are physically close to each other, and for example, they could be in the same server room. And also they connect with dedicated high speed local area networks and high and switches. So I would also like to include the fact that they can also make use of the broadband. So basically, they are connected using the internet. Let's simply say internet, because this one is it makes it easier for us to understand. In addition to that, in the communication cost is assumed to be small. So in a parallel database system, your communication cost, that's the cost of communication from one of the devices to another, is actually assumed to be small. Then you also have, it can be a shared memory, shared disk, or shared nothing. So they can share the same memory, they can share the same disk, or they can share nothing, depends. But the most important thing is that they are located very close to each other and they can perform this of different operations at the same time. So, but on the other hand, a distributed database, it's the machines are far away from each other. They can be connected using a public network like the internet, yes, and the communication cost is often assumed to be higher than the parallel system in the case of the distributed database system. and then it's usually shared nothing. They don't share anything because the reason that each of these locations of data, they are kind of independent. So you get, so they could store their cache in one part of the world, and then they store, let's say, the main database in another part of the world, and then let's say they store the password in another. So you get it. It's kind of like distributed. So anytime you are trying to access the cache, you get to your request to the server on a different and distinguishable location. So basically, that's the difference between this. And then we have the architectures for parallel database. So there are three main architectures for parallel database. You have the shared nothing. So basically, this means that there's nothing being shared between the computers. So that means the multiple CPUs are attached to interconnected networks. So you have different multiple CPUs. Then we also have the shared disk. So in this case, each CPU has a private memory, but and they have direct access to a central disk. So that's why it's called a shared disk. So this is a shared nothing here. So we have the shared nothing. We also have the shared memory. So this shared memory, it is when each CPU has local main memory and disk space, but no two CPU can access the same storage. So all the communication between CPUs is through a network communication. So we have the shared nothing, shared memory, and shared disk. Depends on what is being shared between the computers in a parallel database. So basically, on the other hand, in distributed database, it's usually shared nothing. They don't share anything. And one of the features of this is that they have independence between the data locations and data computers and servers. So and then there are different types of distributed database, though, but we won't be talking about those. But let's just know that they are usually having a shared nothing architecture. They are mostly independent servers which are integrated by a central computer. So that's the distributed database, and they have their advantages and disadvantages of each of these database systems. So for the distributed database, it is simple to implement. So that's because you can easily implement a smaller structure, and then later on, when you have the standing, when you have the leverage, you can implement another one. So you can just keep building on um, all those all those structures. You get it. So basically, it allows you to keep building on them. But whereas a parallel system, I would say, it doesn't really allow for that because it is kind of localized, centralized. So, and if anything happens to that central place, then the database system just collapses. There's no backup. There's no alternative. So I think most of the time, big companies, they often opt for distributed database systems because the world is kind of like a global village, and so you can actually locate your database anywhere in the world, and then you can connect it with the internet. So and then it is but apart from the fact that distributed database is actually gives room for more expansion, it is actually expensive. It is expensive because server machines are not underutilized with simple user instructions. So basically, in this case, you have specialization. So basically, in this kind of stuff, you have to have special machines, and that increase the cost instead of using general purpose machines for this. So an example of this is maybe when you want to vlog, and then you need a camera. So you can decide to use your phone camera, or you can decide to use a digital camera. So when you use a digital camera, it is kind of like a one-way thing. You can't use it for any other thing. You get it. So that's kind of the way you should see a distributed database system. It's kind of each of those server locations, they are like cameras. So they have their own functions, special machines. But whereas in the parallel system, you can have just one device or a few devices performing multiple functions. So that's the simplest way of understanding it. So and with time, I've come to understand that actually these parallel systems and distributed systems, the parallel, they are kind of like used by all the small companies, whereas the distributed is often used by the large companies. It allows this collaboration of different servers and so on and so forth. So I hope you've understood that concept. And there are different ways of storing data in distributed systems. We have the fragmentation, and we have this fragmentation. They are divided into vertical and horizontal fragmentation. So we'll also be talking about that in a later video. But I hope this is as far as we can go. If you want to know more, you can also Google it. You can also research more. But this is supposed to be an introductory explanation to parallel and distributed database. So these are the questions you can attempt them. You can also tell me your view on this topic in the description of this, rather in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next.